So as the great Conor McGregor once said, "Viva la Brasilia," dude. Because I don't know what you thought. Because some people thought the crowd was a bit rowdy and like disrespectful, which is like to be expected. Because like if you didn't know that coming in, you're just lying to yourself.
Yeah.
But I thought the Brazilian crowd was amazing for UFC 283. I don't know what you thought, but just the passion
Well,
alone.
I mean, considering like it's gonna be the first fight we talk about. Like, the Glover leaving the gloves in the cage and there nobody like hardly anybody being there still.
That yeah,
That was really that was really bittersweet, cause like I mean you'd have to think like yeah like that was I don't think that was just on the spot for Glover. Maybe I mean maybe like I don't know like who I guess who truly knows if coming in like if he lost like that was the plan all along. But I mean he we're obviously gonna talk in depth about it, but yeah like he took a beating
yeah.
in that fight. But I mean, yeah, that I guess, yeah. I mean, for the most part, yeah, I agree with you. And
And it sucked because
Brandon Moreno part was savage too.
yeah, I was kind of expecting that with Moreno because like it's just what they do there. Like that's like, I mean that's to be
Yeah,
fair, that's kind
I
of why
mean,
Colby Covington always said what he
I mean
said.
that on like the fans, the crowd's part too, and Brandon Moreno afterwards with the "Viva Mexico."
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I
you,
fell asleep during
yeah.
it live, but I did
He
watch it
probably
back.
knew he
Not the
had it.
interview
He
though.
probably knew he had it coming after that. So I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
so,
doesn't even matter. I mean, they would have done that probably anyway. But
yeah.
it's just how they are. They're like when they're walking out. Sometimes you hear them like chanting in Portuguese, like "You're gonna die," like that type of stuff. Like, and then you think of the old days too,
I
like
mean,
with
yeah,
Chad Mendes
it's an
going there and
intense
all these
crowd.
guys.
And they have, I mean, yeah, like how can you blame them with the amount of Brazilian-born fighters they have at the top? So
And they
like,
love them there. Like I've always thought that was weird how like you see like the Russian like people support their fighters, the Brazilian people support theirs, Australian theirs, but like the US that's not the case, which I think is weird. Like I don't really think about it that much, but like I don't know, I feel like there should be some of that. Like it's just like, why not root for your own country? Cuz like in the US they're just bleed fans basically. I think
yeah,
that's what it probably
yeah,
is.
exactly.
But I don't know. But I guess we'll get into the actual fight itself, like you were talking about, because obviously, like while Glover took a beating and like he looked tough throughout, and like there was definitely a few points in that fight where they could have stopped it if they wanted to, and I don't think anybody would have cared. But before we get to that, I honestly want to talk more about Jamal Hill because like I don't know what you think, but that was like the performance of a lifetime for
Yeah,
Jamal.
it sure
Like
was.
I think we can all say that we underestimated him a little bit. Like, because I remember last week we were talking about it a little bit, and like me and you both kind of agreed, like, if Jamal would win, it'd probably be by like an early knockout. But then you see that he defended, I think it was what, like 17 out of 19 takedowns, like officially. So after that, you think about like how Glover's done what he does to so many people, just beat them up on the ground, take them down, beat them up, and outbox him on the feet. And Jamal beat him pretty much everywhere, honestly. But what did you think about that fight? I'm sure you definitely want to get your thoughts in.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought Glover was gonna weather the storm. He did, but didn't really get much offense like of his own. And I thought it was the fight was gonna turn a little bit and the decision would be a little bit closer. But I mean, yeah, you can't really like. I guess I mean yeah, on a T you can't blame people for underestimating Jamal Hill. In this 5 round championship fight against a legend, a living legend in Glover Teixeira. Uh, so like I get it in that sense, and then him going the entire 5 rounds too. Like yeah, like Jamal, like I think he's established himself easily. So that was the revolving door at light heavyweight just continues. That's for one. So I'm definitely definitely really excited to see where this title reign takes Jamal Hill, like obviously with Yuri Prohaska coming back as well, like
It's looming, that's for sure. I don't know how long he's gonna be out. Like I don't know if there's another fight that happens in
yeah.
between, but
I am another thing too. Like my thing is, I see. Like, I guess generally, like yeah. I guess naturally, it's like as a fight fan, like you want to think like okay, it's, you get a new champion, like oh, like all the possible matchups and stuff. But Man, I saw so many people on Twitter and stuff last night talk like just immediately on Jamal Hill talking about like, oh, he's not gonna do that to Yuri, or like, oh, enjoy enjoy your like, however long you're gonna have with the belt, like, because it's not gonna, like, generally, like, saying it's not gonna last long or whatever. Like, he's not. Who does Jamal Hill beat in this top 5 besides Glover Teixeira? So it's like, dude, just let the guy have his moment, you know? Like, and
I'm so glad you brought this up.
People too are like, dude, stop crying, stop, on your soapbox so much and crying and stuff. Like,
yeah, that was literally my favorite.
You're not gonna have the title for long, like. What?
Yeah,
like,
God forbid the guy celebrates something he's worked his whole life for, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't know. People, I think, like, the toxicity of, like, casual sports fans has kind of gotten into the UFC a bit more with the ESPN deal and stuff. And, like, it was funny, like, I just had, like, a thought to myself, and this is obviously just kind of, like, joking, because obviously the deal with ESPN is amazing for the sport. But when I first saw it was like 4 years since Henry Cejudo beat TJ Dillashaw on the first ESPN event, and I was like, damn, that was the day the UFC really died. Like, because like after that it just got so like corporate, and then like well, I shouldn't say corporate because they're really not, but they it's definitely different now, the way that the system works, that's for sure, and the way that the fans are, I think, has changed a bit. Like, because now that it's not as much of like a niche sport and like something that only some people are into, like casual sports fans think they could talk about these fighters like they talk about NFL players or NBA players. And like, I think one of the reasons why we even started this podcast is like, you can't be doing that. Like, and we want to tell people that you can't be doing that, because there's a difference between going out and like dribbling a ball and shooting and like maybe getting like checked every so often and something physical, versus what the beating Glover Teixeira took. And then you're like trying to shit on Jamal Hill for putting that beating on somebody by saying he's not the real champ, as if that somehow diminishes the work that he put in. Like, it just bugs the hell out of me. And the fact too that he did that with his original gym, I think it was Cedar Rapids, Michigan, or something like that. And I just think that there's something like cool to that. And I just, even on Instagram, it's the same thing. People in the comments shitting on him like, oh, it's not gonna be long. He went to Yuri, comes back, but I think that that's just pathetic. Like, let the guy have his moment. Like, I thought that was one of the best moments of the night, if not the best. Like, I even said that on Instagram, because like, just, it's so cool to me that you see it hit him. Like, he's getting checked after the fight. He's like, I'm good, blah blah blah. And then it's like he's walking away from the doctor, and you just see it like change in his expression. He's like, I just won this fight.
And
like,
who he beat too?
Yeah, legend of the sport. Like,
someone probably grew up watching. Like, come on,
it's crazy, man. Like, what a story. Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm glad somebody like him could get a belt and like really just hold his head up high like that, because now he could say he's a UFC champion, and like, people can try and doubt him, this and that, in the comments, and you could think whatever you want about when Jamal Hill fights Yuri. Like, if people are entitled to their opinion if they think Yuri's gonna win, but to like use that future fight to diminish what he just did, I think is just disgusting, honestly, because just beating Glover Teixeira the way he did, and honestly the run that he's had with like Thiago Santos, OSP, like, he's been beating these legends throughout, really. Like, well, I don't know about legends for some of those names, but like definitely fighters who've been around for like a while, obviously, in Santos and OSP. But Glover, man, he's one of the best light heavyweights ever, like, in my opinion, at least. But I don't know. I don't know if that fight's next with Yuri. I don't know if anything has come out with like his recovery time. I know he's been like in the gym and stuff like that, but apparently that shoulder injury, according to Dana White, is the worst shoulder injury he's ever seen. So we'll see what happens there. But then like Glover Teixeira retire, and yeah, you're kind of right. Like, it did kind of suck to see that like most of the fans were like gone by the time he basically said that. I'm glad like there was at least some there. Like, you did hear a cheer when he was like giving his whole speech and stuff, but yeah, it's not a good look. I think like the fact that they just kind of walked out when he lost. Like, dude, it's like not even like Jamal. Like, I get that they're rooting for their guy, but like, dude, it's not even like Jamal Hill is like some asshole. He wasn't being like, maybe if Jamal Hill was being cocky like in the come out like here, and he was really just talking shit about Glover, I understand it. But like, there's been nothing but respect in this build up. Yeah. So like, the fact that they just kind of walked out on the other guy, knowing that like Glover's 43 and maybe could retire, but I don't know. But just, I think that,
dude, yeah, especially after that fight. I mean, that's why I was kind of like, saying too, like, who knows if it was just on the spot or he had it planned if he lost, So
I just think that, like, I don't know, like, I don't like, not that they booed anybody in this case, but I just don't like booing fighters to begin with. Like, I think that's a weird culture. I don't know. But in this case, it's just kind of tough because you think that, like, someone like Glover deserves, like, a standing O, and, like, at least one legend got their standing ovation in Shogun Rua. Obviously, it didn't go too well for him in that fight, but at least he got his moment there. But then, you know, Glover, I feel like his legacy is, like, it's kind of complicated because he had, like, the losses in his first title run. Like, well, I say first title run as if, like, he won against in his first title shot, but I mean, like, pre-Jones fight. Like, he was this hyped up guy, and then Jones pretty much took that away, and then he would win some, lose some, win some, lose some, and it, like, for a while it felt like Glover was never going to get there, and then he went on this run, and I'm like, I wanted to pull it up because I don't want to butcher it at all. But so he lost to Corey Anderson in 2018. Arm triangles, Carl Roberson, rear naked choke over Ion Kutelaba, split decision win over Nikita Krylov. That win versus Anthony Smith where he came back. Thiago Santos came back again. I remember he got dropped in that fight. The Jan Blachowicz fight for the title, wins it, dominating fashion too by rear naked choke. And just, like, for him to overcome, like, all the hurdles that he's overcome, and even when he first, like, got into the UFC, I don't even know if you've heard this before, but when he was, like, first being touted up as, like, a highly touted prospect, he was struggling with, like, immigration stuff, like, from Brazil. Like, they had signed him, I think, to be in the UFC, and I don't remember if he had fought and then, like, had a long layoff, or if he was about to and then had a long, like, layoff, but they send him back to Brazil because, like, obviously, like, he lives in Connecticut now. But I just think that that's crazy. Like, just all the things that this guy's overcome is unbelievable. Yeah, nuts. Like, because I think his coach is Chuck Liddell's old head coach, so he's, like, a true OG. Like, he was a Chuck Liddell training partner, dude, and you don't really hear that with a lot of the names today. And, like, I respect it, dude, and, like, even how he fought, just tough as nails, man. I love it. I fuck with it, but I don't know if you have any parting words for Glover Teixeira, but, like, he's one of two fighters on this card, obviously, like I said, whose career came to an end.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't, maybe some people were expecting it if he lost, but I definitely wasn't expecting it. So that caught me by surprise, and yeah, I mean, it always sucks too, like, when you see these legends retire, and then it's like, that's it. Like, what now for them afterwards, and just life in general. So, hopefully, wish the best for him. Thanks for a great UFC career, and yeah, I mean, we'll see, I guess.
I know we'll
see if he fights for another promotion or whatever.
I don't think he's gonna do it. He said that he was gonna basically train Alex Pereira to be, like, the next best fighter, pretty much. And I'm here for it. I'm here with that.
At 205 too, probably.
Yeah, I think he said that too in his interview, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong though, but I know he was saying that he wants to basically keep him at the top.
I'm here for that. I'm really excited for
definitely
Alex
a good
Pereira's
purpose
trajectory.
I liked what Jan Blachowicz said on Instagram about Glover's retirement. He said, P.S. He's like, you still owe me a rematch, so I'll see you on the mats. I was like, that's cool. I like that. That's, like, classy. Because obviously before that, he called him a legend. He's one of the best. It was an honor to share the cage with him. But I thought that was a cool reaction by Jan. Hopefully he gets somewhere back in the title picture soon after that whole debacle with Magomed Ankalaev. Because 205 is wide open still. That's my view on it. But I guess we can move on.
That's the John Jones effect.
Yeah, I mean, he's never coming back.
Yeah,
I think
it went
at this
from
point.
the complete opposite to now it's completely wide open.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, like, people are using that to, like, shit on the current champions. But, like, I think it should be to celebrate Jones and DC. Because, like, you always see that meme. It's like, oh, there's been, like, what is it? Because it's been Yuri, Jan. Yeah, there's been 4 light heavyweight champions in the past, like, couple of years, and then I think it was, like, the past decade before that, it was only John Jones and DC. And, like, people use that to hate on the current division. I'm like, why can't you just say that DC and John Jones are goated? Like, you know what I mean? The way that sports culture is nowadays, it's so easy to hate on people instead of just, like, giving respect where it's due. Because, like, those same people are the ones who say John Jones is the greatest of all time. So I'm like, if you think that, then why are you shitting on these guys? Like, if he's so great, like, then that's why he reigned over that division for so long. At least that's what I think. But anyway, back to another division that could be wide open depending on what the next title fight is. Because now I think that there's a saga that's been closed between Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo. Because Dr. Stoppage, round 3, Brandon Moreno gets the win.
Bittersweet fashion.
Yeah, what did you think of that? Did you think that, like, the eye poke was the main reason? Or because I don't know. I don't think that was, like, a crazy, egregious eye poke. He just, like, the way it looked to me, he punched him, and then the follow-up shot, he, like, grazed him. But, like, it wasn't like Leon Edwards Belal to me.
Yeah, I mean, but still, like, too, I mean, that was crazy looking at Figueiredo's eye. Like, he couldn't open it at all. Like, there's really no choice but to stop it. So, I mean, you know, yeah, I think you definitely live with it, knowing, like, you know, okay, like, they're probably gonna see each other again down the road. But now we've seen this fight 4 times, and Figueiredo is now moving up. I mean, yeah, you want a more, you know, definitive, clear, you know, result, but still, you know, like, you know, it's not like Brandon Moreno cheated or anything. Like, you know, he's the champion, fair and square now, undisputed flyweight champion. So now it's his division to carry because, you know, obviously, like, this is a division that was, you know, on the brink of just being no more before, you know, Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno, like, you know, essentially revived it with this rivalry. Yeah. But
not Henry Cejudo. No. I'm so tired of hearing him say that, dude. I saved the flyweight.
Henry
Nobody cared about it when he was in it either. Like, God, man, that guy pisses me off sometimes. Yeah, but he's one of the best. No disrespect, man, because, like, he's one of the reasons why. It's just more
fuel for his fans to just put him on, you know, the pedestal.
Oh, well, he deserves it. Like, achievement-wise, I think he's the best. I think he smokes any of these dudes and went 125 if he were to ever go back there, but that's just not going to happen. And, like, he's the reason why I think that John Jones is going to run through Ciryl Gane in March.
So now, I mean,
a different effect.
You know, now I guess the question is can flyweight still, you know, suffice with Figueiredo out of it? I think so. I think, like, yeah, you know, it's still more, you know, top heavy than not, but it is interesting now. Like, the Figueiredo movement, like now that causes a big problem for, you know, bantamweight, obviously, and then, you know, which is already as stacked as it is.
And now, Cejudo, if we're talking about that too, because if he's coming back, is he going to come back then at 145 and not 135? Because he trains Davison now, I'm pretty sure.
I think
training him.
Yeah, I think the Sterling fight's going to happen, so I think it's going to be a bantamweight, but yeah, it's a good question.
Because Sterling said he has, like, a shoulder injury, so, like, people are saying maybe there should be an interim title fight.
I think it's like a partial tear, whatever.
Yeah. I guess we'll see what happens with that. We can't really predict it. The flyweight division, though, I think that the obvious fight to make is Moreno versus Pantoja. I've been beating that drum since we started this podcast.
That's no question.
Yeah. Dude, Pantoja, like, was going up to him after and saying, look, man, like, please. Like, come on. Brandon Moreno promised him. He said, you're next, I promise. So hopefully we actually get that fight this time because Pantoja earned it about, like, 2 years ago. And, like, I think it's time to give him that shot. But we'll see what happens there. I think that this time it'll be made because Pantoja's got 2 wins over him, man. One on tough and then one in just, like, in the promotion itself. So I'm here for it. I want to see that matchup. I'm curious to see how Moreno does in a third fight versus him because I think he's a lot better now than he was when he fought him the first 2 times. But so is Pantoja. So we'll see where that one goes. But the rest of the main card, I mean, we were talking before this about how this card had a lot of one-sided performances. Like, even the 2 title fights, pretty one-sided. Like, I think Jamal Hill was 50-44 across the board, and Moreno was beating Figgy down on the ground anytime he had him there. On the feet, that one was a little more even.
Well, I think that was definitely going to be the closest fight, you know, of the card if it, you know, went the distance.
Yeah, I don't know though, because I thought Moreno was winning each round. Like, on the feet, it was close.
That's fair, like, to think too. Like, Figueiredo just coming in, like, clearly didn't have a good weight cut. And how
Yeah.
like essentially like all right like that it's literally it now. He's moving up.
I'm
So
glad too. Like I think it's about time. I've always been worried about that. Like since the first time he fought Benavidez and missed weight, because like that's when you know a guy's struggling. I hate when like a champion is
dude,
struggling to make weight.
dude,
So
maybe that fifth fight isn't too far fetched to think. If Davidson Figueiredo can get the bantamweight championship and says, you know what, I want to get, I want champ status, and I want,
goes
what,
back.
well, he'll probably say like my belt back, and then Brandon Moreno might still be champion by then, and
God,
they
wouldn't that
do
be
it a
something?
fifth time.
Dude, you sold me on it. I know, honestly, I haven't even thought of that. Like, so like I'd be pretty interested if that was like something
Yeah,
they
no,
could somehow
that's
manage
the
to do.
only that's the only way I see a fifth fight ever happening. So
Yeah,
that's a thought that came to mind afterwards.
yeah, that'd be something if that somewhere down the line if that's like the case. But I don't know. Probably unlikely, I guess. I know one rematch that's never gonna happen is Gilbert Burns versus Neil Magny, and like even before the fight, anybody probably could have told you what was gonna happen in this one because it was kind of like Giants Eagles this weekend. Shout out to the Eagles. They because when I saw this matchup, I was like, I don't know if there's any area that Neil Magny is better than Gilbert Burns. Like Gilbert Burns is a better boxer. He's
Dude,
better
yeah,
jiu-jitsu
with
by a
with
mile.
a Brazil, with a card like this and a huge country like Brazil, like I feel like I think at least two fights on this card, like, and I mean not even Lauren Murphy and Jessica Andrade, which was the most lopsided fight on the card. Like I didn't think that was going to be as much as a mismatch, but
Yeah, me neither.
I didn't love the Paul Craig and Johnny Walker fight, and then this one, like when it got changed to this, obviously like you know I wasn't. I thought, Gilbert Burns was a pretty like handily like bet to win.
Yeah, you think he's
And
like minus like 500 almost. So I think it was a safe one. I didn't put any money on this card because I wasn't confident enough in the pick'ems,
no,
and anybody who I was confident enough was like a minus 800.
yeah, you
So
can't do that when like obviously we're strictly trying to showcase the Brazilians here. So
yeah, well, it didn't go too well with the
yeah,
main two fights. They won all the rest of them, but they didn't get their belts. So I guess you could argue either way on that one.
yeah, it
But I
doesn't
see what you
always go.
mean.
Yeah, it doesn't always go the way you want it. That's the beauty of mixed martial arts, sports in general. So
Yeah, Gilbert, he called out Colby, but I don't see that happening, and not because I don't think the UFC would make it, but like I was listening to Joe Rogan, and it was the episode that just came out with Belal Muhammad, and Belal wants to fight Colby too, but he says that Ali Abdelaziz, manager, he's been saying that like he's hearing that Colby probably isn't gonna fight because of the Masvidal
yeah.
thing, and he's like still in court because but
Oh,
Bilal
so
said, I'll like give you this, and then I guess you can tell me like what you think. Like Bilal says that what he's hearing is that Masvidal, since he sucker punched him and hit him from behind, he really like either did something to him
oh shit.
or like because Colby I think is trying to go to court and sue him because he's claiming like some sort of brain damage, and Bilal says the way that he understands it is that if Colby fights, he's basically screwing his case because why would you take a fight if you have brain damage?
Yeah.
So like if that's the case and if that's like true, which I think it probably is, I mean I don't see why it wouldn't be. Um, I don't think Colby fights anytime soon. I just don't. It's just not realistic to even think that. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure Burns probably has no idea about that, which is why he probably called him out. But because of that, like I think that his name is one that we're probably not going to be hearing that much in the next few months, maybe next year.
Let's think about no, you gotta wonder what's that mean for Masvidal too. Well, you're probably not gonna see him for a while either.
I don't know. They were talking about him versus Leon at one point, but obviously that didn't materialize. But at the same time, I mean, like I don't know if you saw this too. The like I think it was like body cam footage came out like when he got arrested and stuff, and he was in the back of the cop car in handcuffs, like literally hands behind his back, and he's like talking about like getting booked and stuff. He's like, man, he goes, if I knew this was gonna take this long, I would have told you guys to stop at Burger King first. I'm like, I was like, this dude. I'll give him credit. Like that may be like an interesting move, sucker punching the dude who you already fought in the cage, but that line I thought was pretty good. But I don't know, like if Colby's out, what do you think of maybe Gilbert Burns versus Belal for like a title eliminator?
Well, I mean what I originally thought was like, Colby was just gonna play the waiting game. Obviously just having like that leverage over Gilbert Burns and Belal Muhammad being a former, champion, and then just one of the best. Yeah, just ranking, everything speaks for itself. So I thought he was gonna, play a waiting game, like, let. I feel like, yeah, I think.
God, I forgot Colby was champ for a second. Because like when you said that, I'm like, when the fuck did he even have a belt?
Dude,
and then I thought about RDA.
It feels like a lifetime ago, but it's like, man, it really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah,
like,
it was probably
really
2018, I think. So
2019, yeah, something like, yeah.
That's wild, man. No, 2019, I think, is when he fought Robbie Lawler. He was just holding the belt for that one. I don't think he was interim champ. Because like I'm remembering this now that you brought it up. Because like he beat RDA, and then he was supposed to fight Woodley. But then he had like the deviated septum, and then he had surgery, and the UFC like stripped him for no reason. And then he came back like a while later, and that was when he fought Robbie Lawler, and he was just carrying the belt. But like, and he has a point. He's like, "Why would you strip me? I didn't lose, and like I wasn't out that long." But like, I don't know. That's a whole thing. You could debate Colby's title status however you want, but I just think that was a great win for Gilbert Burns, but an expected one.
Yeah.
So I don't see like a title shot coming out.
I think Belal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns is definitely gonna cross paths one way or another. I think it's gonna happen. Because I mean, like, yeah, like Gilbert Burns was on a skid before this fight. Like, this is he needed this one. He needed this one pretty badly. So, and he got it. He got it done in convincing fashion. So, I think it's only up from here for him. Hopefully.
Once Neil Magny's arms went flailing, I was like, he's screwed. Like, good luck, buddy.
This is where this ends.
Yeah, it sucks. I like Neil Magny too, but it is what it is. But you were talking about this fight before. What were your thoughts on Andrade versus Murphy?
I said before, I didn't think this was gonna be as one-sided as it ended up being, but holy, like, this is the best you've seen Jessica Andrade in like years, probably. That's that. There's all there really is to say. Like, what from here, like. Because the call out was very interesting.
Who'd she call out? I didn't even know.
Zhang Weili. She said something along the lines of, I had to go through like hell and back to fight you in China. Now you have to go the hell and back to fight me. And like, I don't know. I don't think necessarily in Brazil, but just kind of just calling for that title fight again.
Yeah, Andrade's title reign was a bit weird to me because she beat Rose. And then they had that random. It was a fight night in China, and then Zhang Weili starched her like quick. Yeah. It was like a minute, I'm pretty sure. And like, that's a crazy way to lose your belt in enemy territory.
She doesn't have the best ground to stand on, but I mean, hey, like whatever case she had to make, like she made it last night. So
it's just tough because she's in a weird spot, like because Zhang Weili already beat her, like you just said, and then you think of Shevchenko at 125. That fight didn't go any better. So, like, she is in a weird place now in both divisions, 115 and 125. But the one thing that stuck out to me in this fight, and probably the only thing that I'll even really say about it, is, like, right off the bat, I think I mentioned this to you before, the fact that, like, Lauren Murphy was, like, just like throwing a jab, and then Jessica Andrade landed like a 4 or 5 punch combination like right off the bat, like while she was still throwing the jab. I was like, ugh. I was like, she's so much faster. And once Murphy couldn't take her down, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be a long night.
It got nasty for Lauren Murphy.
Yeah, which sucks too because I like Lauren Murphy a lot. I'm a big fan of her because like the hard work and grit and how she got herself into her first title fight. Was that last year or the year before? But
I thought it was gonna be just strictly which it was, but one figured
it'd be a little closer.
Yeah, just a little closer than it was, but
yeah. And then
for Jessica Andrade, yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm like we were just saying, we'll see where it goes next for her, whether it be at 115 or 125. Who the fuck knows, man? Maybe she'll be like, Amanda Nunes, I'm calling you out. That would be a bad fight. But anyway, you were saying something about this fight before, and I'm like curious of like what your thoughts were coming in, and because my thoughts coming out of it is don't think I'm ever gonna pick Paul Craig against a power puncher ever. Like the Volkan fight was my first like no with that because Volkan hurt him pretty bad. And then this one, I think he was literally just in on like a single or a double leg, and Johnny Walker's just hammer fisting him, and that was a wrap, pretty much. He just doesn't protect himself well when he's going in for those takedowns, in my opinion.
Yeah, he kind of just kind of throws all caution to the wind.
Yeah.
Like,
is that what you thought coming in? Because you said, like, when you were talking about the Burns fight, you mentioned
well, I'm
this one
just
too.
generally not the biggest fan of Paul Gregg. It's like not like obviously not him as like a person or anything, but
Yeah,
you know,
just like
his fighting style and all that. It seemed here like, all right, let's bring Johnny Walker into my wheelhouse, and this fight's gonna go exactly how, you know, he's gonna dictate it. You know, body on the ground, off his back, and all that. And then he's not gonna get hit all that much. And
yeah, he got hit a little bit.
He got raw. He looked helpless in there. He didn't get really like any sort of strike in, it seemed. So
yeah, I don't know. I guess you figure it's hard to strike with Johnny Walker when you're not a good striker, but at the same time, like if you're gonna be going for takedowns like that,
that's the, you know, coming into this fight, like it's just not one I really cared for. It was just, you know, kind of surprised to see it open in the card. I thought I didn't think it was gonna really. I guess for the Johnny Walker effect, which is very cool too. I think Johnny Walker definitely, you know, deserves his flowers as one of the more like underrated light heavyweights in the division that's been around.
He's gotten a lot better too. Like for a while, like people were calling him a hype chain, but he's been like quietly getting back, like in that division, and like I respect it. And you think about the only loss really that he's had in like the past couple of years is Jamal Hill. So. Like you think about it like that, maybe Johnny Walker deserves a little step up after this. But I don't know. You were kind of talking about this before about like the Brazilian showcase. I think maybe that's kind of probably why they opened the card like that, because they figure either Paul Craig is going to use some sick Brazilian jiu-jitsu to submit Johnny Walker, or Johnny Walker, a Brazilian, is going to knock him the fuck out, and that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
And the Brazilian fans are going
fair
nuts.
Play. Yeah, fair play.
See him doing the worm in there. Dude, he's awesome. I like him a lot. I like both these guys a lot.
Yeah.
But then the other moments, like the prelims had a bunch of moments, and like obviously I'll let you like bring up any that you want to bring up. But the first one I was really going to start with, because I mentioned it before, was the fact that Shogun got his last like little send off. It sucked that he got starched in the first round, but it's
this one hurts.
Yeah,
it's coming from somebody that, you know, obviously, you know, really like getting like seriously like branching off from casual territory, like you know, I guess fairly recently, but not for, you know, for all that long. Like obviously nowhere near for as long as Shogun has been, you know, around doing his thing. But you know, this is like this guy Anderson Silva and the Diaz brothers. Obviously, like, this is one of these names that, like, you know, you just think of MMA in general, and it's just one of the names that just pops to your head. Like, yeah, I know who that guy is.
Yeah.
But this is what it is with Shogun, man. I thought like this
True
one hurt. Yeah, seriously, man. Like
you go back on like his Tapology and you start to get into Pride.
He put a lot of eyes towards the sport.
Dude, and like I think of those Pride fights, and I think of the ones that they even showed last night, like the one that always sticks out to me. The last
Pride fighter.
Yeah, true Pride fighter, because like Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz, like they fought in Pride, but it was on the U.S. one, so he's really the last one to fight like in the Japanese, like the real Pride. And like they showed the one yesterday that always I love watching because it's just brutal, when he knocked out Rampage Jackson in the ring with the soccer kicks, bro. Dude. And then I'm looking at his Tapology right now, and after that, you know, Nogueira, Overeem by first round finish. It was, I think it's like one round. So, but, and like you're looking at these fights, he beat Overeem again, beat Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman, Chuck Liddell, Lyoto Machida, Forrest Griffin, Brandon Vera. Like, it's just crazy. Yeah. All the guys, Corey Anderson, like, it's unbelievable. This guy's one of the best fighters. You know, I said this about Glover. I say this even more about Shogun Rua. Like, in terms of like guys at 205, he's one of the best ever. And like you hear people talking about him like they started fighting because of Shogun in Brazil. Some of these people, and you know, I'm glad that he at least got a send off, even though the fight was a little bit bittersweet. It's just the fact that like he got his moment. The fans gave him that one last cheer, and yeah, it's just, you know, you're seeing these old dogs like go away now, and it's just kind of like you're starting to see the turn of the sport now, with newer guys becoming champion. Like even like Jamal Hill. I didn't like how they brought this up during the interview, but he is the first person to be from Dana White's Contender Series and win a championship, and I think there's something to be said about that. Not on the fucking broadcast, though. I thought that was stupid. Like, this guy just won the title, and they're like, you're the first Dana White's Contenders. As if that means anything. Like, him being on Dana White's Contender Series, like, means nothing to me. I think it's just, like, it's just a fight. Like, but you got to bring Dana into it. God forbid he just won the title because he was a good worker, not because he won a contract on Dana White's Contender Series. But, you could tell, like, DC, I bet they said that shit in DC's ear, too, because, like, right when he said it, they popped that graphic up there. First fighter from DWCS to win the title. I'm like, dude, there's definitely some producer in here. Mention Dana White's Contender Series now. But, yeah, I don't want to dwell on that too much, because obviously I'm talking about Shogun, but great career from him. It sucks that we had to see him and Glover retire on the same night. Two OGs of the sport, man. But it is what it is. I mean, the time was going to come. I'm glad he at least realized that it's time. You never like to see people really getting, starts at the end of their careers. And he started off okay, but as the round went on, it just wasn't meant to be. But I guess, honestly, one of the other things that I thought was crazy on the prelims was the Bonfim Brothers, dude. They came out of nowhere and just, like, dude. So I'm watching, because I worked that day, so I got home like midway through like the early prelims, and one of the first fights I was really sitting down and paying attention to was Terrence McKinney versus Ismail Bonfim, and I was hyped for that fight coming in because I knew it was going to be a good one. And then he landed. The fight was a war, like just going into it, and then Bonfim obviously lands that double knee on him and just makes him face plant, and I literally screamed. I was like, oh, as I watched that, and like I had to explain it to my mom because like sometimes like when I'll go crazy, and like I'll just be in my room, and then like y'all hear like, what are you going so crazy about? And then like you see this video of some guy getting starched, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. But and then later on, I think it was like 2 or 3 fights later, Gabriel Bonfim made me go even crazier because he's fighting I think it's Monir Lazez, who's a good fighter. Like, I've seen him fight before. He's got good striking, and then he guillotined him in 49 seconds. Like, dude, doesn't get much better than that. Like, the Bonfim family must have been going crazy down there when that shit happened, because I thought that was so impressive. But what did you think of those two brothers? Like, I think those dudes are legit, because Lazez and McKinney are two like real opponents, and they fucking had their way with them.
Yeah, I didn't know a whole lot about these guys coming in. I just saw I noticed there was a 2 pair of brothers fighting on a card. So like, I think clearly the UFC, wants to like, do something with these guys and like, see, but like, and it reflects in each of their opponents too. Like 2 up and comers themselves that are, kind of already established in their own right for like being good fighters, but
not entry level in the slightest.
These guys made them look silly.
Yeah, I think that those 2 guys are gonna be a problem, truly.
Hey, I mean, maybe now maybe perhaps for Terrence McKinney's case, like maybe that Patty Pimblett fight's more likely now.
I don't know what they're planning on doing with Patty Pimblett, dude, because. Well, Patty actually, I'm pretty sure he got hurt.
Yeah.
Like, he tore something in his ankle, I think. So he's going to be out for a while. But, which sucks. Like, you don't want to see that.
Yeah.
But, trying to see, like, what I have besides that, like, just written down. But, there were a couple just, like, I guess, dominant performances, per se. Like, the Bruno Ferreira knockout of RoboCop was insane. But then you got Jelton Almeida versus Shamil Abdurrahman? No?
Yeah.
Seen him fight a million times. Yeah, I should know how to say it.
Yeah, this name, this is the name that got me in the spelling bee.
Yeah, one of the only Russian names I know how to spell. Still can't say it, but I know how to spell it. But he,
this was fair play to, Abdurakhimov and all that. Not trying to necessarily, disrespect him or anything, but like, there's another one of these fights where, like, okay, like, clearly we're trying to showcase and rightfully so, because beyond just this fight, and who, this matchup and all that, like, Jelton Almeida, I think, is, a legit, like, force in this division and, like, has championship potential written all over him. like even as soon as this year probably.
His
So
ground game is like legitimately elite. The only thing that worries me is his cardio, because if he's not gonna stop a
well,
guy in
yeah,
2 rounds, I don't see him lasting
he
5.
throws everything but the kitchen sink at you like really early on.
See, but I'm hoping that this fight kind of taught him a little bit, because I don't know if you noticed this, but like before he like was not like was on top of him in full mount and just like really pounding on him, he was scrambling like for position, and like he was just kind of laying on him, taking a break, and like you could tell he was breathing heavy, and like I hope being that tired in that moment like makes it
Yeah.
obvious to him that he should like, all right, I gotta get a better gas tank here, because but he's like a jack
I
dude
mean,
too, so
yeah,
that
and
makes it
like
harder.
if so, it's really good to like know that, and like even gives me more like that like thought that like he can become champion at some point this year. Like he can work on all these little like these little flaws and stuff out. Like so he's just gonna get better and better, better and better.
It's a
And
bold prediction. You think he's gonna
I'm
do
not
it, or you're saying
necessarily
it's like
saying he's
possible?
going to, but I'm saying like there's a legit chance. I think.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I think this one was obviously the Brazil card and all that. I think people are starting to know, Jotin Almeida's name like now as well, and you know, maybe the matchup with Abdurakhimov wasn't too ideal, but I think Abdurakhimov is definitely a good name to have under your resume,
for sure.
and so he got that done. So I mean, I think he's definitely on that, on that uprise, that trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see who he gets next. I'd like to see like a good grappler who can last like for a solid 3 rounds, and see how he survives if it's like getting towards the end of the fight and he can't just take a guy down at will. Because I'm curious to see how he would do with that adversity.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The heavyweight division's in like a weird spot though. Like that's like why at first like I was just trying to figure out like what you were saying about the title picture, because like I could definitely see him going on a run and becoming like a contender. But dude, like the past
Yeah,
however many years, it's been clogged.
it's a pretty volatile. Now you got John Jones, like it's a pretty volatile like division. It always has been, like it's the heavyweight division. Like it could be anybody's night, any given night. But
Yeah, one punch is all it takes really at that
yeah.
weight. But
So, but I think I keep liking what I'm seeing from this guy. So
yeah,
definitely,
I'm
I've
sure he'll
definitely
get
got my eye out. Yeah.
he'll get a big step up next. That's for sure. Let's see what the rankings look like at heavyweight real quick. I'm gonna see if I have any names off the top of my head that I wouldn't mind seeing. I don't know. Let me look this up before I say it. And this guy has a fight booked, and I'm just talking out of my ass, dude. I've had that happen like a couple times, and now because okay, yeah, no, he has a fight booked. I was gonna say Tybura, but I want to see a grappler. Like that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Romanov, but that might be a little early for a guy like that because they're both kind of on the rise. But then there's not really that many grapplers in that divisional. Like because you go above Tybura, Rosenstruck's a striker, Volkov striker, Lewis striker, Aspinall striker, Tuivasa striker, and then Curtis Blades is the grappler at number 4. So that's a pretty huge jump. I don't think that Curtis Blades should be fighting Jailton Almeida. I think he's probably going to fight Pavlovich if I'm being. And he even said that himself on the MMA
Oh
Hour.
yeah, that's right.
But and then like obviously speaking of the MMA Hour, Francis Ngannou went on there like I think a couple days. No, actually, yeah, a couple days after we recorded the last pod, and like it was funny. I was watching that back, and we're like, yeah, I mean they just probably didn't give him enough money, and we were dead wrong, which is kind of funny. But I guess now that we're here, we can talk about what he said his real reasoning was. He said that they tried to throw him money basically almost to shut him up in a way. And he said the things that he asked for that the UFC refused to do. He said one of the things was having no longer than a 3-fight deal. So that way, like even if has to give up boxing for one contract after 3 fights, he says that would take him like a year and a half at most. Then he could box after that. But the UFC wouldn't do that. Other one was he said he asked for health care for all fighters. And he said that wasn't even close to being done. And, there's something to that. Like, I think because, Ariel said, like, something to him about it, and he said, well, I can afford health insurance. I'm in a good spot. I don't need the UFC to give me health insurance, but these dudes who are making 20 and 20, they can't pay for that. Like, it's too much for them. And I just think that like there's something noble to that, the fact that he stuck to his guns even when they're giving him all this money. And I respect the fact too that he said like on Ariel's show like, oh, they said they were going to make me the highest paid heavyweight in UFC history, but they don't have any proof of that and they refuse to give me any proof of that. So it's like, how do I even believe him? I'm just taking their word for it. So, and plus I believe that Brock Lesnar was making like boatloads of money to fight in the UFC. So I don't know if they were really giving Francis more than him, like they said that, but you never know. But then like with Francis coming off this interview, he obviously said one of the things he wanted to do was box, and he said Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua would be an ideal opponent. But I don't know. The thing with me, and I mentioned this to you before the pod, and I'm curious like what you think about it. He pretty like openly had said that like he doesn't really have like a manager. Like he has people like who advise him, but he does his own stuff, which is a little bit alarming to me. I don't know like what you think of that. Do you think it's like a big deal, or you think I'm just kind of overthinking that one?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a talking point. I think kind of right now you just have to wait and see, but like, that does. I mean, at least with this, like, knowing like who it is doing this after what he just did, like just stepping away from UFC entirely, like despite like you just said being offered all this money and whatnot, a literal like the just absolute marquee dream fight in the weight with John Jones as well. Like for him to put everybody just fighters in general like first and their well being and all that goes obviously says so much about Francis. Obviously, if you watch any like interview and stuff from him, like you'll know this is like he's an absolute savage in that cage, but he's a like super stand up guy outside of it. Yeah. So like as far as egos and all that, that's but you still that is something you still have to like take it because obviously like him saying like Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua would be the ideal fight. Like obviously like he means that he's super serious about that and all that. But now it's like obviously like now this thought in mind is like okay like all I have to do is just I'm just gonna talk to whoever I need to talk to and then we're just gonna get it done. It's gonna be like that. Yeah. But obviously a manager or whatnot like for him in that place like he's actually gonna like go about it and like every like it's just you don't want Francis to get hit with like thinking like being sure that something's gonna be kind of like with this just now like all right you thought like things were gonna go fine with UFC and then now it's it's over pretty much but
yeah you just hope it's a good gamble.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really it at the end of the day. You could say a lot because you can obviously say a lot about it right now like like you don't like this is pretty like silly. This is pretty like you don't see this, especially a sport like freaking fighting where egos can be out of control like whenever they want to be pretty much. But Francis like at least with that I think he's definitely gonna go about it as just as like smooth as can be and whatnot, not trying to just stir any more problems than he already like pretty much not even trying to, obviously, but like obviously with how UFC's run and all that, how Dana White goes about business and all that, like yeah, so that's a problem. And obviously now he's stepping away, so you hope like he doesn't, you don't want to see him get screwed over, pretty much.
Yeah, which scares me with boxing because boxing is more of like a cutthroat business in the UFC, if you can even believe that, with how we've talked about the UFC sometimes and their practices. But those boxing promoters, man, they're greedy and like. He said he wants Fury or Joshua first. I don't think that that's going to happen right away, even though Fury kind of like called him out in a weird kind of way. Because the thing with like the UFC is like if a UFC fighter calls out a UFC fighter, that's an easy fight to make. But like you're calling out a boxer who isn't like, yeah, he has a say, but like he is in a promotion who doesn't want to see him lose to some MMA guy. So it's like, I think that Tyson Fury would beat Francis Ngannou with no problem. But at the same time, Francis hits like a train. So.
And then also you have the guys, like, on the other hand, guys aren't going to want to fight him anyways because they don't want to be the one to lose to the MMA guy.
Yeah. I mean, I know I said this to you before. I think the only one that, like, the highest ranked fighter that I could really see him facing in a first fight would be Deontay Wilder. Just because the appeal would be there because it's, like, the two best punchers of our era getting in the ring with each other, but like he's not going to be fighting for belts in his first ever fight. There's no way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much what I was, that's what I was saying before. It's just a long-winded way of saying, like, you don't want to see him, like, just, these, actual, like, business people and whatnot, like, take advantage of him. Obviously, I believe in Francis Ngannou. Like, he's very, like, very smart up there. Like, you gotta love his mindset and all that. Like, he put it on full display with what he just did. Yeah. Obviously, putting, the athletes first, which is, awesome, but,
it's admirable.
Yeah,
that's for
he's
sure.
He's one person at the end of the day. So, obviously we're all gonna be, keeping tabs on it and paying attention and watching closely, but at the end of the day, like, it's just what's best for him. So, you could definitely, like, there's so many things, obviously there's so many possibilities and stuff now you can think of, but I think ultimately everybody should, any true fan would want to just see, like, the best scenario, whatever it is, happen for him. So.
Yeah, I hope it ends well for him. One of the things I was thinking about, just like when I was thinking about randomly, like sitting down one day, was we were talking about the PFL, how they have that new pay-per-view division. If they could find like Francis like a really like legit opponent, or we'll say this, we were just talking about Tyson Fury's call out. He mentioned possibly even just boxing with small gloves in a cage. The PFL could do that, like for a pay-per-view division fight, like a weird, like kind of MMA hybrid, like with boxing, and I think that'd be pretty cool. And like you think about it in terms of the sport, I think it would do so much for the UFC fighters that Francis is trying to help, because by him, the baddest man on the planet, going into the PFL in a pay-per-view fight versus like someone like Tyson Fury or just somebody of that similar stature in like either boxing or MMA, I think that does a lot for the PFL. And like the PFL is already rising as it is. Like I saw, like I think I mentioned last week, the stat that I saw that the PFL wasn't really too much behind like the UFC in terms of like viewership. They did pretty well last year. So I think with like maybe if they could throw enough money at Ngannou, that'd be a good business decision if you ask me. Because then for the first time in a long time, you can't argue that the best person in the division is in the UFC, because like Francis never lost his belt, and like if you put him in the PFL, the best heavyweight in the world is in the PFL, not in the UFC. So, and you can think what you want, like if John Jones or Ciryl Gane wins. I mean, if Ciryl Gane wins, it's not a debate. But if John Jones wins, you can probably debate it, and that'll be debated endlessly because you're never going to see that fight now, it's a tragedy. That's for sure. That's one of the best fights of all time that we're never going to get to watch, but. That's how business is. And I like that John's been handling it pretty respectfully. He's like, I respect what he's doing, and I, wish him the best. But we'll see what happens with Francis. Obviously, you can only wait until more news comes out. And when it does, we'll be on here reporting.
I think it'd be pretty hard pressed to find, a fighter especially, but like anybody that doesn't respect what he's doing besides Dana White, obviously.
Yeah, so. It was funny. I was watching that same Belal Muhammad episode of Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan was like, I really don't like that when a champion leaves on top. And I'm saying to myself, I'm like, well, tell Dana to act, like maybe stop stiffing these fighters a little bit. Like he acts like Francis just left to leave. Like he left for like some.
Yeah, that was pretty selfish of Joe Rogan.
It was funny too because you could tell he was like there was something on the business end. Francis asked for, and then he cut himself off, and he said something else. I was like, he knows why Francis didn't come back. He's just not saying it. But I understand it. I mean, Joe works for the UFC. Him and Dana are boys. Like, you're not going to ever see him talking that much shit. But I will say this. Joe Rogan is more real of an MMA commentator than most others. Like, some of these UFC, like, commentators, they won't even ever speak the words Bellator, PFL, One Championship. Rogan, he's a real MMA fan. For better or for worse. I mean, sometimes you could say whatever you want about his commentary, but if you really listen to him, this man knows his shit. He's watching regional stuff from like overseas, so he's a legit MMA mind, even though he's never obviously fought in the UFC or anything like that. But lots happened, man. UFC 283 was awesome. I thought that was a great way to start off the pay-per-view year. All this stuff with Francis Ngannou is interesting. We're going to see what happens there. Almost forgot about this until they brought it up on the broadcast, just because of the Jones fight and the Edwards fight, but The next pay-per-view, man, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. That's going to be crazy. Next week's card starts at 1 a.m. Eastern time. That's pretty horrible. But I'm sure I'll watch that the next day. Definitely probably not going to stay up for that one, I don't think. But anyway, either way, I'm definitely going to watch it. I think it's, Spivak versus Derek Lewis, right?
Yep.
So that should be a good fight. I think it'll be interesting. I'm pissed that got canceled the first time, so I'm glad that one's going to be happening now. And, obviously we'll be here talking about that next week and any other news. If you haven't watched Main Card Tiz episode 1, get on that. The link will be in the description. This man's going to be putting an ass whooping on March 11th, dude. You're going to mess this kid up. And yeah, I mean, unless you got anything else to say, I'm all good for this pod.
Yeah, that's it. We'll see y'all next week.
Peace out.
Hey,